Good day, listeners. This is Romero D Lashley of the United Progressive Party, speaking again a short discourse on the topic of national interest. And this time, my topic is about the common entrance examination. We've just concluded another exercise, some almost 4,000 students in the common entrance examination, or better called the Barbados Secondary School's entrance examination. And we recently saw in the newspapers celebration of about 23 or so students who got above 98 in either subject. And these 23 represent slightly over half of a percent of the students who participated overall. And these students would have excelled in mathematics and in their linguistic abilities, and let me say the written linguistic abilities, because language is not only written, language is also spoken. But we look at the written linguistic ability and the mathematical abilities, and we make an assessment and we laud those who are top performers. I laud them too. At least 4 or 5 of those top 20 were students who, in some way or other, I had some little dealing with. However, that's beside the point. The point I want to address now is that we are assessing these students based on demonstrated abilities in 2 areas of intelligence: the linguistic and the mathematical. And oh my gosh, I mean, since 1983 with Skinner, before him and after him, several scholars have expounded on the issue called the multiple intelligences, and every single trained teacher in Barbados has heard something about the multiple intelligences. And we are well aware that students demonstrate ability in a number of areas of human endeavor, not just mathematical and not just linguistic. And therefore, we do a disservice to students, really, if we think we can make a sensible picture of their abilities based on those 2 subjects alone. For that reason alone, the common entrance as it stands is inadequate. My leaning is not so much towards abandoning a common entrance examination as it is towards broadening the examination to look at a greater collection of skills and abilities of students. Skinner referred to nine intelligences, including things like the musical and kinesthetic and interpersonal, intrapersonal, so on. Even without knowing all those terminologies, we know in society that students and persons in general excel and can make excellent contribution to society in other areas. Our own Rihanna, Oprah Winfrey, Sir Garfield Sobers, the great Sir Albert Einstein. So many persons in our knowledge have and continue to make worthwhile contribution to society, who are not necessarily linguists and not necessarily mathematicians in that sense, because the world is far wide and far more complex. Therefore, our persistence in measuring people's ability on 2 areas alone is rather outmoded. And while we celebrate the presence of those who are top performers, I'm sure everybody, not everybody, many of us have heard about something called the bell-shaped curve, which hints to us that as there are performers who are high up in the curve, as the ones we celebrated in the press, there are performers as well who are on the other side of the curve. By its very definition, the word average will have as many people above it as there are below it. And our education system is not catering adequately to those persons who are below average. We are feeding everyone on this pretty much academic diet, even as a transition into secondary school. Some exceptions, but by and large our diet is principally academic, and by and large our schools are measured by how successful they are at secondary level in CXC passes. And we are not catering to the needs of persons who we call the special needs children adequately. We are not providing avenues of excellence to those persons who are not gifted in the traditional academic sense of the word. And many of those persons go on to become great entrepreneurs and great contributors to our society. And we need to have this reflected in our education system. It's not enough to wait until the children on the bench become children on the block and lament the potential hazards they are to our society. We need to harness people's attention and find a way within the present system for those who are not necessarily highly flying academics to excel in this particular aptitudes and areas in which they're gifted. And when students leave the primary arena, we do a tremendous social injustice when we stratify them in layers based on scores and send them off to schools. When we separate them based on academic scores only and send them off to separate schooling. They operated at primary school with mixed abilities. It hasn't prevented students showing excellence. After secondary schooling, they converge perhaps at university, which is mixed ability as well. It doesn't prevent excellence coming through. Or they may leave school and go into the workplace, and the workplace doesn't stratify people based on academic ability. We work pretty much in workplaces and in organizations as a team of persons of various aptitudes and abilities, and that atmosphere doesn't prevent excellence coming through. What is so great, what is so different about secondary school that it must be done by stratifying people based on academic abilities? Is there room for a more sensible and a more meaningful way of grouping that does not cause stigmatization of our students? If, for example, we look at a broader profile of students' abilities at the primary level, not just English and mathematics, but look at all the intelligences, all the various ways in which people demonstrate ability: musical, athletic, whatever, what have you, interpersonal, verbal abilities, etc. If we did that, and then we allow students to go into secondary schools, where the groupings are not just based on English and mathematics scores, but the groupings are propelled by students' strengths and inclinations. Suppose, for example, we had some schools that specialize in the arts, in musical and the artistic expression, oral expression. Suppose it was a cadre of schools that specialize in that kind of intelligence grouping, or there were schools that specialized very much in musical and so on and so forth. Isn't there room for selecting schools for students based on their demonstrated strengths or aptitudes in given areas of endeavor, and not simply on my score in English and mathematics? Wouldn't that lead to a less stigmatized grouping of students, where you're not going to school because you only got 33 or you only got 25, but you go to a particular school grouping because you are strong in your music, or you're strong in performance arts, or you're strong in athletic abilities, and so on and so forth? These are ways in which students could be grouped, where the stigma is much less, is much reduced. The old way of stratifying students based on English and mathematics scores contributes to the stratification of our society, where we have this hierarchy of people, and we see it reflected in housing, in where people live, we see it reflected in the transportation system, and so on and so forth, and in many ways. Let's consider a different form of transfer of students from primary to secondary, where we take a look at a broader profile of abilities, and out of that package of abilities of a student, we decide which sort of school best develops that child's strengths, not just in English or mathematics, but in a broader package of abilities. Don't you think most students would have a chance at feeling that they have achieved excellence, more than that 0.5% who are highlighted in the press? Something to think about. Romero Lashley, United Progressive Party. I'll be back with more thoughts to share.